chaired by Councilmember Crowell and joined by Council members Katsas and Smedley. I don't believe Councilmember Reisner is here yet. So we'll get started with the 2021 budget.
Thank you, President Isley. We will start with the 2021 budget. And I know there's Mr. Reisner.
There he is.
Mr. Reisner wants to speak to this in particular. Council Member Reisner, we just started with the 2021 budget, and I will give a little bit of a background, and then hopefully we can hear from you. I know this was an item that you wanted to dig into. The question really for the 2021 budget in this case is the cable franchise money. I believe that previously allotted money was to be included in the general fund, all 100% of it. But that change actually, as I'm told, was not made. So I believe 50% of the cable franchise money was in the general fund and 50% was held out. So the question really for us to discuss, and that I know Council Member Reisner wants to bring up, is supporting the government channel and looking at what needs the government channel may have for 2021. And we could work with Mr. Thompson to determine how to use that money that is the cable franchise money. Councilmember Reisner, do I have that somewhat correct?
Yeah, you summed it up pretty well. I really don't have anything to add other than the fact I think funding for the government channel and any ancillary channels that we may do now or in the future, because we're going more and more into social media, Zoom, Facebook, and so on, and who knows what it's going to be a year from now. So I believe these funds are necessary for us to be able to get the equipment, the necessary software, training, and so on, so that we can at least keep up with the game and not get behind. So I really urge that that council keep these monies where we can use them, and so that we have a really good media department. And that's pretty much it, I think.
Yeah, I 100% agree. In this time of the pandemic, we have been leaning on the government channel as much as ever in my time, and they've just been terrific. And we all want to be able to have this flexibility in times of emergencies such as what we're under now. And so I agree with Member Reisner. Anyone else on the Finance and Personnel Committee want to give any comments on this issue? Okay, anyone else on council like to chime in on this? And yes, Auditor Hecht, did you wave your hand?
I did. Trying to find my unmute button. So I think really it's been that way ever since I can remember, half and half. And we paid the ACT out of the cable fund, but we have used money for government channel stuff out of there before. There's actually no reason to move that money into the general fund, if that's what you're thinking. I don't really know. But Scott can certainly request money out of the Cablevision fund. And I know for a fact that we have used money out of there for the government channel in the past. And, in a way, it's just if it gets all put in the general fund, it will just get swallowed up. All that revenue is split however it's split. It's better off leaving the split. But now we probably have more money available because we're not paying for the community television anymore. So,
Thank you, Auditor. That my understanding of this was that had been a decision made last year, I guess, to actually put it all in the general fund, and that actually was not executed. And I would agree with you that if it can be used, staying in that same fund, then we don't get it lost in the general fund, and we can support our local.
Yeah, and I'm sorry about that. That might have been my office that dropped that ball. I don't really remember that. And so,
Yeah, I think it's fine. I don't think any balls.
Probably was. Well, that's sort of a new, yeah. Thank you, Sam. It's sort of a new thing. We have had the community television since I started until just very recently. So that's been 16 years almost. So, but yeah, I'm not, it's up to council, I guess, but I'm not necessarily in favor of putting it all in the general fund. And I have no issue with the government channel spending those funds out of the cable fund.
Great. Thank you. Mayor?
I want to echo everything that Kathy just said, the auditor just said. In this time in history, if ever there is a need for our government channel to be, as sustainable and resilient as ever, it's now, because so many people are watching this. Granted, council's not back face to face, and we'll see how that plays out in the not too distant future. But, I believe that the government channel, certainly in terms of messaging out to our populace, what the government is doing is invaluable. So. Yeah.
Agreed. Okay, seeing no further discussion on that first item, we'll move on here to the SOPEC grant. And just to remind everybody that the city administration has successfully worked with Mayor, I guess, AEP Energy or AEP Ohio to bring a installation at the water treatment plant that will provide the city with some resiliency when it comes to having power for outages. As the mayor explained to me earlier this week, we always had the ability to borrow generators in case of a very serious electrical outage, but this would give us the battery storage capability, basically, to have this installation. And we have a probable grant offered by the Southeast Ohio Public Energy Council, SOPEC, which would cover the match that the city of Athens needs to make to receive this this installation. The amount of that match is $28,167, and it would be completely paid for through this SOPEC grant. So this would require a separate ordinance, which we will see come before council next week for city council to formally accept this grant to pay for this really awesome sustainable feature that the city will now have. I just want to say too that this is a win-win-win, I think, and at no cost to the taxpayers of the city of Athens or from the current finances within the city. Mayor, did you want to speak to this a little further?
I do. I have two comments to make, Councilmember Crowell. Number one, the city of Athens will be one of two test sites for this pilot microgrid systems, the Columbus Zoo and the city of Athens. Currently, there may be future test sites. AEP will have control over the microgrid system for the first 2 years and collecting data, after which the city will acquire control over this system and we have the opportunity to do some interesting things with this backup battery system, basically, this microgrid. The other thing I want to point out to all of council and the viewing audience tonight is that I am on the board of directors for SOPEC, the Southeast Ohio Public Energy Council. And during the decision-making process of this particular grant, I recused myself. I was not a part of the conversation, nor was I any part of the voting approval for this particular grant. Again, just want that to be known. I think this is great because at the end of the day, if council authorizes this to go through, this microgrid system will cost $0 to the city of Athens for the first 2 years. There may be a little bit of a cost on the back end when AEP turns the system over to the city and gives us the keys, just for the cost of connecting into the water treatment plant through an umbilical connection off of the microgrid system. But other than that, this is a wonderful element of resilience, as you indicated, Member Crowell, for one of our most vital public assets, that is our clean, safe drinking water.
Excellent. Thank you, Mayor. Yes, Member Clodfelder.
This just sounds fantastic for the taxpayers of Athens. I am so glad that you found a way to get this funded, and that SOPEC was so incredibly generous to provide the matching money for us. But I just wonder, since SOPEC is being so incredibly generous and helpful, will they now be more involved in this, or are they just being so generous?
No, it is part of the philosophy behind SOPEC. We're also members of NOPEC, as you're likely aware, for our gas aggregation. And NOPEC has very similar programs. It's all based on the number of customers that you have. And, the city of Athens, we received the solar lighting for the bus shelters and the personal device charging station picnic tables. And hopefully soon to have some freestanding street lights that are solar operated in places where there is no power to where those lights are going to be deployed in the future. So this is very similar to that in terms of what SOPEC is able to do to provide these resources to everybody that's in the SOPEC territory.
Excellent. Any other comments on this SOPEC grant? Okay, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Member Clodfelter. Now we're moving on to the next item, which is CARES Act funding. We received from Service Safety Director Pyle a final report for council approval for CARES Act funding for expenses related to the pandemic. It's a very detailed, well put together report, and we would be basically doing this next week with suspension of the rules, as there is a deadline of November 20th for the city to have this entered in the grants portal. And so we would be discussing the necessary ordinance next week. But I believe the Finance and Personnel Committee has this report. Were there any questions from the Finance and Personnel Committee about the items in the report? It all looked like it was very well done there. Thank you, Clerk Walker. I'm sorry, I'm distracted there by a chat to me. But just to move forward under the CARES Act, any further questions about the city administration putting this together? Yes, Member Clodfelter.
As I was saying, I started looking at that budget today, and I was really impressed by the level of detail and by the fact that it looked like just about every single thing that was purchased was absolutely critical and really directly related to COVID. But I don't have that in front of me, so maybe I should be asking this on email. But I remember wondering when I got to the end, there was like a yellow line about the budget and then a blue line, and it wasn't entirely clear to me what those different colors corresponded to. And so perhaps somebody could answer that via email if you don't have it in front of you right now, but everything made sense until I got down to the totals, and then I was a little bit confused.
Member Clodfelter, I do not have an answer for you. I don't believe that SSD Pyle is with us tonight.
Getting an answer later on email would be completely fine, but before we really vote on it or something, I would just appreciate that clarification if it's possible.
We'll get that information to you, Member Clodfelder.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Any other comments here? Yes, Mayor Patterson?
I do have a comment, and that is that we may have to do some slight adjustments with the 2 grants that we issued to HAPCAP. I received an email earlier today from Glenn Crippen at HAPCAP indicating that at this point in time, with the rent and mortgage relief funding that we sent to HAPCAP to administer, they have expensed out $10,761.95 under that program. And currently, they have assisted 2 clients in the amount of $731.64 under the city utility program. As I understand it, the governor released another pot of money that is dedicated to things like rent and mortgage relief or utility relief that will be going to agencies such as HAPCAP, Community Actions, and other organizations that offer relief such as this, which what we may do is quickly is work with HAPCAP to have them reissue that money back to the city of Athens so that we can spend that down so that we aren't turning money not used by December 31st. At this rate, it doesn't look like all of this will be used. In particular, the $75,000 that was issued for the city utility relief. We could likely keep the rent and mortgage relief in place, but they will be, again, I just need for this to be clear, is that they will be receiving money. When I say they, I mean HAPCAP, for further programs that Kelly Haddis will be administering and Glenn Crippen up at HAPCAP for things of that nature. So in short order, we will likely have them remit back to us what wasn't used from the city utility, and that way we can expense that out because we still have need in areas that we can use that money and do so quickly. So, but I share that with everyone in that HAPCAP will be continuing programs in that vein of utility relief as well as rent and mortgage relief.
Yes, Member Smedley?
Thanks, Member Crowell. That's surprising that the utility relief program usage is so low. We kind of thought the opposite was going to happen, particularly because we knew who was behind on utilities. The thought was that we would be able to call those folks directly. So my question was, are we doing that? Sorry. And if not, can we? Thank you.
We have been working with HAPCAP to address that, Member Smedley. We have been working closely with HAPCAP to be able to identify individuals who might be behind due to COVID-19 in their utility bills, but even then, they're still not getting a whole lot of people contacting them and saying they would or could apply for that funding. Again, seeing much more in the rent mortgage relief, which is wonderful to see. And that might be offsetting a very small amount of that, Member Smedley, in that people know that they can pay their rent or their mortgage, and therefore it loosens a little bit up with their own income to where maybe they are able to pay their other outstanding debts. And but I don't know. I have no intel on that at all, Member Smedley. But I will certainly continue to work with HAPCAP. But at this point, time is of the essence to be able to make sure that we are not sending money back when we know that we can be using it. So we'll continue to work with them.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, we'll put the money where it's seemingly in demand. And if the mortgage and rent relief or other areas is where people are needing and wanting it, I agree, we should move it. It's just surprising. So yeah, I appreciate your staying on top of that.
Any other questions about the CARES Act? Thank you, Mayor, for that additional information. Okay, President Isley, may I go back to a previous agenda?
Yes.
Okay, great. So under the 2021 budget agenda item, we were also to discuss the 2021 appropriation ordinance, staffing, non-union benefits. We have our first draft of the budget for 2021. President Isley, did you want to provide a little history of that?
Sure, just to take a look at the comparison from the previous year, although Auditor Heck probably knows these numbers backwards and forwards. And thank you to all the administration and the departments I know who have worked so hard over the last few weeks to get this together. For our general revenue funds for this coming year, there are budgeted $16.7 million. And last year that compares with $15.2 million that was in the budget. And then for our other funds, our proprietary funds, this coming year we will be budgeting $33.999 or $34 million. And last year that number was $29.6 million. So it brings our overall budget this coming year to $50.7 million. And last year it was $44 million. So a slight increase, and working with administration to make sure, and also the auditor's office to make sure we've got the revenues to balance our budget, which we're required to do by law. So
We are. Can I speak?
Please.
So Leanna and I were able to go through our revenue budget today, and then look at the budget ordinance that you guys have in front of you, and see if there were any funds that were over budgeted for what we think is going to come in for revenue. And actually, it was better than I thought it would be, and better than last year. I think that department heads and whoever does the budgets has been pretty conscientious about that. One thing to keep in mind that on top of our revenue budget is you add the carryover. So there will be, of course, some carryover more than other funds and things like that. So we had a guess on our carryover. We added that to what we think the revenue is going to be. And we didn't really come up short on some of the funds I thought we would have, like last year and the year before, which is the general fund and rec and community center. And some funds will be tied. They won't have a lot of extra money for the rest of the year, depending on how the revenue comes in. But even the few odd ones that were over, it wasn't really anything serious, where I'm thinking I can bump this revenue up, but it's not going to come in, kind of thing. And then we'll have to figure something out. So anyway, I think they've done a good job, and we just have very little tweaking, and I was pretty happy to see that. Another thing I might tell you, that when we have a loan or a bond out, every year we have to budget the entire amount, on most of them anyway. With bonds, if we have an amortization schedule, we know exactly how much we're going to pay. But most of the notes that come before you, we decide how much we want to pay down. And some of those get pretty hefty, and we have to add that in as an expense and pay off the whole loan. But then we're renewing it. So say we owe $500,000 on a loan, we pay $50,000 down. We're paying out the $500,000 because we have to pay it off every year. But then we're reborrowing $450,000, so that brings that revenue back in. So sometimes those numbers can look big because of those loan amounts, but on the other side of it, on the expense side, but on the revenue side, we're getting most of that back by reborrowing the balance, if that makes sense. So I think that's something to consider for some of those, water, sewer and streets, and some of the changes that might happen there, even in the general fund. That's it, unless anybody has any questions.
Any questions from council? Mayor Patterson?
I don't have a question. I do have a comment, and that is that as council is looking through this, I would ask that you look, closely at the capital outlay 500s. You'll note that aside from the CDBG formula allocation, the small cities ODOT grant, as well as the sewer fund, sewer plant rather, that takes up more than half of what the total capital outlay is for the city. I've instructed all department heads that we're going to look at things with a fine-tooth comb in terms of any capital outlay this year going into 2021. It's pretty bare bones at this point in time. And I think they've done a great job. I also want to recognize Patricia Morris Whitmer. Patty has done, she's put in countless hours of collating and pulling this data together and getting things in line. So I just want that to be known by council. Next time you see Patty, tell her thank you.
Will do. Thank you, Mayor. Yes, Member Clodfelder?
Perhaps now is the time to mention something I wish I had stated when we were discussing the CARES funding, since you mentioned Patricia Whitmer. I noticed as I was going through there that there was a little bit of variety in terms of how many times or how often each department bought things locally. And the best example of supporting our local businesses during this tough time was the mayor's office. And I don't know for sure, but I suspect Patty Whitmer has a great deal to do with that. I noticed on just about everything that was purchased related to CARES funding in the mayor's department, it was purchased locally. And one thing that was really striking to me was that you bought masks from Shriver's Pharmacy. And I think that's at least county owned. And I think, that's good. In my opinion, that's really good. And there were some departments, and I'm not, this is not a huge criticism, but I noticed several departments bought their masks from Amazon. And I just wondered if there's any encouragement for the departments to try to support our local businesses during this tough time if they can, or, if it might be possible to kind of encourage them to do that.
I will absolutely encourage them to do that. Yes. Yes is the answer to your question.
Okay, great. And truly, I was pleased to see what an excellent job the mayor's office had done with that. My hat is off to Patty or whoever was ordering those things.
Excellent. Yes. Thank you. Any more discussion? We may want to return to leaning on the mayor's office to say anything about the ordinance for non-union personnel salary and fringe benefit package, which we have in our shared drive.
I will offer one brief comment while the mayor is getting that document open, that we do have a redlined version, so the text that has been added in is indicated in red. And, so for council members to read through that this week, I know there's some clarification on full-time non-exempt employees and full-time exempt employees on when overtime is allowed, and clarifying that, and excluded employees. And so it didn't look like major changes, but it does look like a cleanup of the language in the non-union staffing. So.
Yes, thank you, President Isley, for pointing out that it is a long document, but you can scroll through and find the sections in red, and those would be the proposed changes for the 21 ordinance. Mayor, do you want to speak to that, please?
Sure. As you're looking through this, all council looking through the staffing ordinance, you'll notice that the majority of the changes are at Arts, Parks, and Recreation, the rec center, where Director Moore is kind of realigning different positions. This is not anything new or shouldn't be anything new to council. This has certainly been discussed in the past, most notably, changing some of the terminology of the positions, such as the programs operations manager for Arts, Parks, and Rec. There will still be one program specialist for Arts West, but there will not be a program specialist. At least that's that title and position at the community center childcare program. That'll be shifting somewhat at the community center. We did have a person who took another position in the city, the individual who was our head landscaper. We made the decision that we really didn't need to continue with that particular position as a head landscaper, which I'm at this moment don't recall what the pay grade at the time was. It may have been pay grade 3. But we're going to revert that back to groundskeeper under the, along with the other groundskeeper and an assistant groundskeeper. So those are the main things. I should tell council, if you haven't heard this already from either acting SSD Chief Tom Pyle or anybody else, that when we have had retirements this year under COVID-19, we have not been replacing a lot of those retirements. So, and we'll likely not be replacing many of them moving into 2021. So I might be coming back to council depending on what things look like as we migrate into 2021 next year, at either end of the first quarter, maybe at mid-year, in July, end of June, as we look at how things are from a financials perspective, that we may revisit the staffing ordinance and make some changes to the overall staffing ordinance as we move forward. Hopefully we won't have to do that, but this gives us some wiggle room in that we will have carryover for the positions that were remained unfilled this year, because as you're aware, they're fully budgeted for at the beginning of the year with the 2020 and every year with the staffing ordinance. So we, with the auditor's office, will be keeping a real close eye on all of these as we move forward. So if council wants any more detail on anything, please ask away.
Member Clodfelder?
Do you have a rough idea of how many such unfilled retirement positions the city has had?
Member Clodfelder, I don't. I can get you a firm number. I believe it's in the high teens, but I don't know for sure. So let me get that number for you, and I will absolutely let you know. Now, I should also share, there's some critical positions that we have to fill. So there will be some in the near future that we will be filling. We also think that there might be individuals who can apply. People who work for the city already can apply for some of the vacancies as they materialize. And when that happens, we really take a close look at the position that individual was currently in or had previously been in as to whether we really need to fill that position as well. It's kind of we typically see this where people will migrate around and it kind of creates a domino effect. But again, under COVID-19, we're looking very closely at these as they do happen.
Okay, any further discussion? Yes, Member Reisner.
How many non-bargaining unit employees will we have for 2021?
Councilmember Reisner, I don't know, and I can get that for you. We typically look at about a third of our labor force as non-bargaining unit, but if you need a firm number, I can certainly come up with that and get that information to you.
No, and the non-union total indicated on the staffing document is 172. I'm not sure if that's what
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's what you're asking, Councilmember Reisner.
172 non-bargaining unit employees?
That does not.
That seems too high.
Well, that may be including seasonal employees or others who, by and large, are not in the collective bargaining units. And so I can look at that more closely and get you a firm number.
Okay.
But for and Auditor Heck, please correct me if I'm wrong on this. Our full-time employees, FTEs, we're looking at about 185, 186, somewhere in that neighborhood, give or take, total. Everyone else, when we have seasonal, we go up to, give or take, 220 employees total in the city of Athens. That's typically during the summer months. Lifeguards, we certainly staff up with help when it comes to the upkeep of city parks and the cemeteries, things of that nature.
Okay.
Okay, so backwards on our agenda, we're still at 2021 budget. Any further comments on that agenda item?
No.
Move to the last agenda item, appropriations and transfers. And I don't have anything specific, I don't believe, to bring up. We already talked about the accepting the grant from SOPEC, which deals with money, but is not a separate appropriation ordinance issue. Am I missing anything that President Nisley or the mayor? We did not meet this week with the auditors, so I don't have it.
I'm not aware of any other appropriations or transfers.
This is the appropriation for the BWC refund checks
Oh,
for $503,789.
Oh, the Bureau of Workmen's Compensation.
Right.
thank you.
So I guess we have that receipt of that check. Auditor Heck, does that just...
Well, we've been getting these rebate checks for a couple years now. And so when we get them, we appropriate them right away to pay our bills so they don't just get mixed in with the other revenue and used for other purposes. That way we can still cover our bills. So when we get a check, we usually ask for an appropriation right away.
Okay, that's fine with me. Mayor?
Good idea.
Auditor Heck, I know that you and I haven't discussed this in a while, but in my conversations with the HR director, Ron Lucas, this year we saw a substantial savings in terms of healthcare, and I wonder if that's an appropriation that we might need to look at, Auditor Heck, if we're going to pay in advance or anything when we're looking into 2021 for healthcare.
Yeah, we certainly could and probably should. You're right. Yeah.
Okay, seeing no further discussion on appropriations and transfers, that ends the Finance and Personnel Committee, President Nisley.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Crowell. We'll now move on to transportation, chaired by Councilmember Katsas, with Councilmembers Crowell and Clodfelter joining in.
President Nisley, thank you. And as we've seen, this is finances season. It is not really transportation season. So all I have on my agenda is an LPA request from ODOT District 10. ODOT is getting ready to bid out a project on US 50 and 33. The timeline for it is in March of 2021 is when it's going to go out to bid. So we would see some work in the summertime, and this is a painting project. And my assumption being that this the stretch is only about 1.75 miles long, and it's 50 and 33, so it's probably where both of them come together and run the same route for a short period of time. As usual with every LPA from the state, this is 100% covered by ODOT with the work. They're just looking for our grace for allowing them to do work within our city limits. Do we have any questions on this one?
No.
Okay. Mayor Patterson.
I don't have a question.
Mm-hmm.
And it is transportation related. And I just wanted to share real quickly that the current paving or the near completion of the paving that has taken place on US 50, 32, that is a state project. I have received complaints from individuals asking why the city has created such a habitable nightmare on that route. So that is an ODOT project. Thank you.
Yep. So it's always good to clarify. So yes, that is all I have tonight for transportation. So I'm ready to turn it over. Thank you.
Oh, Dan, do you have one question from Councilmember Smedley?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I wasn't looking over there.
Yes, Member Kotz, it's not related to an agenda item, just an expression of appreciation for progress being made on the corner of State and Schaefer by the STUMAC building. That road is closed temporarily for anyone who didn't already know for the repairs that are being done there, and at much jubilation for many West Siders as well. Thank you.
And I will personally apologize to the citizens of Athens for the number of projects that are currently going on, which is creating kind of a detour nightmare in the city of Athens, with Zayo putting fiber in, with that project that you just indicated, Arian, Member Smedley, and also Columbia Gas working on Stimson Avenue. So there is a lot of orange cones in the city of Athens that are all transportation related.
At least our traffic is a little bit lower due to the current situation. So thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Thanks, Councilmember Kotz. We'll now move on to Committee of the Whole. And this is a resolution that was suggested by the Ohio Municipal League. You might recall that back towards the end of March when our government channel staff was helping us piece together part in-person meetings and part remote, the legislature then passed on March 27th a bill that enabled city councils to meet by remote, and also state boards and commissions and local county governments and also higher ed boards. That legislation, Senate Bill 365, is slated to end at the end of November, and by December 1, we could potentially have to return to meeting live. I know that I think Mayor Patterson and Mayor's Association conversation mentioned has brought forward our plight to the governor, and also it was actually our government channel staff, Ryan Schwartzoff, who contacted Senator Fedor's office. That person is the sponsor for the bill. We're hopeful to get it extended, but what they have urged cities to do is to pass a resolution. And so we do have a draft resolution. It's a simple one-pager that just says, for health and safety, and particularly because of the large spike of COVID-19 cases, we're urging the legislature to extend the deadline to allow us to continue to meet by remote. So that's it. We are meeting with the health department staff tomorrow just to begin to look at our council chambers and how we can, when we do return to live meetings, we can safely distance ourselves and make sure that our layout is safe. And we're very grateful to this health department for helping us with this. They had helped the courts, I believe last month, in how to set up properly in their chambers. So any comments from council members? I saw some nodding heads that people were in agreement, perhaps, that we can try to continue to meet remote. We'll do council member Fall, then Katsas and Smedley. Oh, Chris, you're on mute.
I think that there's some magical thinking done by some people of the idea that COVID is not going to be any worse going into the new year. And we need to keep saying that because people are getting really tired of COVID, and that does not help keep it contained. We also have to also realize how many students are going to be coming back in January. And not only are we, if we're in council chambers, and then how do we interact with the students? The students who come in after, and that's just not COVID. That's not COVID safe. I have concerns. I think that it's going to be exploding, and unfortunately, it's kind of heading that way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
President Isley, thank you. And so I was thinking, and it's not just about us, but it's also having the public being able to have that access, and if they don't feel comfortable coming into the room. So I guess whichever way this shakes out, I would definitely still hope that we have some sort of robust way where people can communicate in a safe fashion. I mean, we just went through an election where we had to provide those types of protocols. So I guess as a city, as a government, as a council, we would have to make sure that those things are in place.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay. And Councilmember Smedley?
Thanks, President Isley. I would support this resolution as well. We have been able to be very effective meeting in this way. I'd certainly welcome any feedback from those who have struggled to get in touch with us, but I get the sense that people have adapted well, and we continue to be efficient and effective meeting in this way. So I would encourage us to continue to do so. Thank you.
Thanks. Councilmember Clodfelter?
I also support this resolution. I think it only makes sense until we get COVID much better under control, and I don't think we're even close to that point yet. To take our feet off the gas, so to speak, right now would just be kind of reckless, I think. So, but like Member Katsas, I too want to ensure that the public can still watch our meetings and participate in them if if members of the public choose to do so. And I was just trying to imagine what the Department of Health might say about the council chambers. And of course, I can't read their minds, nor am I a public health expert. But my guess is we'd be spread around the room like we were for one meeting, I think, in the spring, maybe 2 meetings, because we couldn't be socially distanced on the dais, not if we were all present. And I think you could film that. You could put that out on video for the public, but it might be weird, right? Because you'd be focusing on the dais, and then they'd have to turn the camera there, and the cameras would be going all over the place. And it would be interesting to hear from the public what they might prefer. But I suspect that even though Zoom is not overly scintillating as a means of communication, it's probably easier to look at than the meetings would look if we were really socially distanced around the room. And my guess is the public could not come into the room. It would just be us using all of the space. So I hope that we can just stick with doing this online.
Sure. And I think, Councilmember Reiser, just before we call on you, what I will say is that Scott and Ryan, our government channel staff, have done a preliminary look, and that there could be as many as, I believe, 8 people that could be in the council chambers along with us, safely social distanced. And I do believe we have some new TriCaster equipment that will enable us to continue to allow the public to participate by Zoom. But tell you what, I'm going to call on Councilmember Reisner, and then Scott, Director of Government Channel, Scott Thompson, would you be willing to speak with us for a moment on a couple of these points too after Councilmember Reisner speaks?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Go ahead, Councilmember Reisner.
Well, thank you. I support this resolution in a couple of reasons. One, I'm in the high risk group now. You know, I hate to admit it, but I'm one of those that if you contract it, the odds get pretty stiff that you're going to be very ill or perhaps you die. I like to remind people that we've had a couple more COVID deaths in the county last week, possibly a couple of more, and because of different ways of counting, they may not be included in Athens County, but nonetheless, and those people have been, I believe, people about my age, if not more. So I look at the council room. It's small. It has a low ceiling. The air is not particularly good. And I think we're learning more about COVID is it is transmitted by aerosol, by spray. And, you know, sometimes 6 feet in a room that's small and being there for about 2 hours at a time, you're basically setting yourself up to be a super spreader. And then if only 8 people of the public could get in there, how then do we say which 8 get in? Do we do who first come, first serve? Is it done by lottery? Do they make a reservation ahead of time? If one person wants to get up and leave, can another person come in and take their place? Mm-hmm. You're getting a can of worms open here, and I don't think any of the scenarios work out very well in terms of public health. So I would really, really say we support this resolution, and until COVID is gone, we continue to do what we're doing. What the state legislature wants to do with themselves, well, that's up to them. But I know how I stand on it.
Okay. We'll hear from Director Thompson, and then I believe Councilmember Grace had raised her hand, and then after that, Councilmember Clodfelter. So Director Thompson, yes.
Yeah, we spent some time measuring today, and the room layout would be, there would be 4 people up on the main council area and then 3 in front. So there'd be like a 2-tiered row for council. President Nisley and Debbie would be off to one side where the kitchen would be, and then we'd have the other administration officials down the other side of the wall, and then we'd end up with 8, possibly 9 people spread out in the room with the podium clear to the back by the door. So that would be the layout of the room should we not get any other advice from the health department. That's where we social distance and measured out everybody. You know, we're happy to do whatever we can to help everything. It's just a matter of, you know, being compliant with sunshine and whatever the state legislature decides on.
Okay, thank you. And Councilmember Grace.
Thank you, President Nisley. I just wanted to sort of join in with what Councilmember Reisner was saying. And from a public health perspective, this going back to in-person meetings with a group of our size and public accessibility, I feel would be a really terrible decision. And I certainly hope that we are given an option to continue with our remote setup. And I so appreciate the work of our government channel, making it as seamless and accessible as they have through this medium. But there was a special press conference today discussing just how serious the situation is becoming in Ohio with physicians from our top healthcare facilities throughout the state, from Ohio Health, from the Cleveland Clinic, discussing the fact that we are beginning to reach the point of maxing out the state's ability to really care for patients. And if the caseload continues to grow exponentially, it's not so much hospital bed space and equipment and PPE, it's medical providers who have to continually put themselves at risk. And then they too have to quarantine and isolate if there's a known exposure. And so I just want to remind the viewing public, anyone who may watch this, please remember, out of thoughtfulness for our neighbors and our healthcare providers. Please mask and social distance, and really, really be mindful of the fact destructive disease that is killing Ohioans, and not just it. Death isn't the only negative outcome. It is obviously the worst, but people are struggling with long-term health consequences, and even if they don't have those, hospitalization is incredibly challenging for the providers and the families. Individuals who are hospitalized and cannot see family members. It's really putting a significant strain on our population, and so please be mindful of what's coming. And right now, it's not looking like it's going to get better quickly. There is hope of a vaccine, and I do want to hold on to that hope. This isn't a forever situation, and it feels long, but we need to continue being as safe and mindful as we can for our fellow citizens. And just because I saw a message about this earlier from Athens Public Transit, please wear your mask on the public transportation. It is required, and don't hassle the drivers about this. They are only trying to follow the rules and protect everyone. So everyone, please wear a mask on public transportation and anytime you're in public. Thank you.
Councilmember Grace. Yes, Councilmember Clodfelder.
Just one other comment regarding kind of what the quality of the experience would be for people who would be watching the meeting if we go there in person. We would all have to be wearing masks, right? So that might make it a little tougher to hear what we're saying. Or, I just think I definitely support this resolution. I think a lot of us would have real concerns about going back there in person.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you. Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you. I agree with everything that everyone has said here. I just wanted to make note that I was contacted by a student reporter this weekend to do an interview on this very topic, on how City Council had adjusted to this virtual reality. And I gave it nothing but thumbs up. And I said that the government channel was doing a wonderful job, and President Isley and Clerk Walker were doing a wonderful job keeping us on track. And it felt like, very few bumps in the road to me. And I thought that we should continue as long as we have a health reason to do so. Thank you.
Thanks. Councilmember Fall.
I think one thing that I've noticed is that public participation may actually be larger because they don't have to come to the building and park and go out in a stormy night and all that sort of stuff. And also people who have weird times that they work. I mean, there's so many, we are not an 8 to 5 work anymore. And so I think that it helps to expand our viewership, but it also expands the input, because it's not like up to just people who can, spend noon in uptown at a meeting. So I think that this is actually increasing participation. Thank you.
Yeah, in fact, it was interesting because some of the string of emails from other municipalities said that they thought that committee conversation and discussion had been thwarted by the Zoom. But I too agree with Councilmember Crowell that I think we've had good discussions, and Councilmember Fall's comment that it's been robust from the public. You think back to when we were renewing the trash contract, and how many participants we had that night on the Zoom call. I think there were over 100 to the citywide composting program, the comments there. So we've had several instances just in the past few months where we've had a lot of public participation. So, yep. Okay, good. And it's much safer, right, Councilmember Grace? Think. Okay, from a public health. Mayor Patterson, and then Councilmember Smedley.
Why don't you go ahead to Councilmember Smedley, please? I'll cede my time to Councilmember Smedley.
Okay.
Thanks, President Isley. We don't have I don't think we have the resolution to read, so I wasn't sure. I was just looking up the verbiage around the rule change that allowed us to meet virtually.
Right.
And it looks like it's in effect until the end of the declared emergency or December 1.
Right.
So does that mean it goes beyond December 1 if we're still under the declared emergency?
I don't know. I won't venture to say that. I will share with you that the link that came out from the Ohio Municipal League on Friday is the quickest way for you to get a copy of that resolution. It was a sample resolution that was from, I want to say it was from Grove City. And so there is a copy. I can download that and get it out to you all right away so you can see it. And then we'd welcome any other kinds of comments or additions you'd like to make to our resolution to customize it.
I guess my question, it wasn't in the drive, but I appreciate that link. I just wonder if it will be necessary to do, if this will continue on, if we're still considered to still be in the emergency.
I'm not sure if maybe if the governor declares this, then we're fine to move beyond. They were still in a state of emergency, then we're fine to move beyond. I was somehow of the feeling that if this bill didn't get renewed or extended, that we would need to go back.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
If there is an or condition, then whichever
comes first
goes first, is executed, then that's what happens. So the way I would hear it, that it will expire on December 1st.
Yeah, that's very possible.
Okay. All right, and Mayor Patterson.
Last weekend from 10 to 11 a.m., I was on a Zoom meeting with the governor, and I did share your concerns and mine with the governor on this. It was the governor and the lieutenant governor and several other people on the call, but it was Athens-centric. And what the governor and the lieutenant governor indicated to me was that today they were going to be meeting with the Senate General Government and Agency Advisory Council, or Review Council, rather, because as was indicated to me during that meeting, that even the governor is concerned with that, given this current state of affairs, to where we've gone from roughly 1,000 cases a day to 4.5 to 5,000 cases a day, seeing the current spike that we're in. So again, what both the governor and lieutenant governor indicated to me was that they were well aware of this with Senate Bill 365 and agreed that this needs to be extended well beyond the expiration date that was in that particular piece of legislation. So hopefully that will help and allay the concerns of council and of me. But this resolution is still important because people need to hear the sense of all of you as we move forward. I also shared with the governor that from my point of view, along with ease of engagement with the citizens, that I feel like we have the most efficient city government in all of Southeast Ohio. Our meetings run, I believe, very smoothly, and we get through our business in a very timely manner. Plus, we're doing a lot of good for our environment right now, believe it or not, because we're not driving in our fossil burning vehicles down to city council on Monday nights. So there are silver linings and things.
Councilmember Cuttis.
I just wanted to make mention that I used to walk.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew it. I was waiting for you to say that.
Yeah, Councilmember Katsas, I that's duly noted. I know that you ride your bike or walk, so yes, we have one amongst us who is doing the extreme environmental friendly acts every time.
I think Councilmember Grace has on occasion too, as has Councilmember Clodfelter and Fall. So we've got a fair amount of walkers in the group. Well, listen, as much as I would like to see you all, we'll look forward to your comments on the proposed resolution that will be read then next Monday night. And that's when we'll next meet. So on October 16th, we'll see you all then. Or, November 16th. Don't want to put this behind. All right. And thanks to all of you. And thanks to the government channel who helps make this possible. Thanks, Ryan and Scott. Good night.
Good night.